Long before the bell rings, some fighters want to establish their dominance verbally, whether this stems from a legitimate beef or it's simply done to hype the event for fans, bring in pay-per-view dollars, or establish a psychological advantage over their opponent. We rarely see a big fight that is completely devoid of trash talk. As much as some purists claim to demand a certain level of decency, respect and decorum from their mixed martial arts, let's be honest, we all love some good old trash talk. Every so often, the fighter dishing out the beating on the mic ends up taking a beating in the cage. The fighter who was once being laughed at and mocked has the last laugh when it's all said and done. I'm Tom from MMA On Point, and these are 10 fighters who got the last laugh. Number 10, Dan Henderson versus Michael Bisping 1. Before Michael Bisping was rebranded as a fight analyst and media personality, he was a brash and outspoken young fighter storming his way through the middleweight division with an impressive 17-1 record. It was during that time that the British kickboxer was paired opposite former Pride champion Dan Henderson to coach the 9th season of The Ultimate Fighter. With the United States versus United Kingdom theme set, the proud Englishman relished the chance to taunt his next opponent with no let-up. With every Team UK win, Bisping's trash talk only revved up.
Did UK win? Did we get 3-1? No.
And whenever things didn't go in favour of Team UK, Bisping went on angry tirades, and he even squirted water in the face of US fighter and eventual finalist DeMarcus Johnson during an argument. By contrast, Henderson was generally stoic and dismissive of his rival coach. Henderson repeatedly stated he would do his talking in the cage.
I'll have my chance to shut his mouth with my fist.
Hendo famously lived up to those words as he brutally finished Bisping in the second round with one of his patented H-bombs in what still holds up as one of the greatest knockouts in MMA history. Number 9, Ben Nguyen versus Julian Wallace. Before Ben Nguyen was a fringe contender in the UFC's flyweight division, he first reached the attention of general audiences in a short clip that went viral. This led him on a collision course with Nitro MMA bantamweight champion Julian Wallace. Wallace, who's also known as the domestic abuser that assaulted former girlfriend and UFC fighter Jessica Rose Clark.
That's one thing you can't do is tell him he's a good guy though, because he's not.
When the two faced off at the weigh-ins, Wallace did everything he could to invade Nguyen's personal space. With his Nitro belt draped over his shoulders, Wallace forcefully put his fist on Nguyen's jaw. He continued stepping towards Nguyen until their foreheads touched, and he even added a slight headbutt before the two were separated. By fight time, the tables greatly turned as Nguyen pushed forward with a flurry of punches that knocked Wallace unconscious. The follow-up strikes continued, and Jules the Jackal lost his title in just 25 seconds. Number 8, Holly Holm versus Ronda Rousey. Ronda Rousey's rise to fame in MMA was nothing short of historic. She stormed on the scene with 12 straight finishes, culminating in a quick knockout victory over Bethe Correia at UFC 190. Rousey was being hailed as a remarkable boxer despite the obvious holes in her stand-up game. She publicly challenged Floyd Mayweather Jr. and Layla Ali, entertaining the idea of welcoming her to boxing. Although Holm was entering MMA with a championship background in boxing, she was being largely overlooked ahead of UFC 193. When the two faced off at the weigh-ins, Rousey furiously shouted and cursed at her opponent.
All until now, all that respect, all that everything, all you being sweet, I see right now that it's fake and you're gonna get it on Sunday. You're not the first person that thought that you had the perfect plan to beat me. It's not the first time your camp thought that they had the perfect plan to beat me.
With a UFC record attendance of 56,214 and 1.1 million pay-per-view buys worth of people watching, Holm showcased her high-level striking credentials with stunning ease. After being massively outclassed, Holm finished Rousey with the head kick heard around the world to silence the superstar. Number 7, Michael Bisping versus Luke Rockhold 2. For his second appearance on this list, Michael Bisping finds himself on the good side of things. The odds were heavily stacked against him though. Not only did Rockhold dominate Bisping with a second round submission at UFC Fight Night 55 when they first met, but this would not be a full training camp with only 17 days between the booking and the event day. In fact, Bisping was barely training at the time and was instead filming a part for the movie XXX Return of Xander Cage. With the confidence of his previous win along with his normal bravado, Rockhold very vocally dismissed the Englishman's ability and chances to win.
I'll show you and the world that I'm that much better than you. The greatest of all time. The greatest of all time. I'll show you who the greatest is right now.
He also was very dismissive of his opponent's punching power and finishing ability.
When I was knocking guys out in the UFC, I don't know what he was doing.
Knocking guys out?
Nobody knew his
Slow
name.
down, slow down.
I've got an 80% finish.
And once the bell rang, that attitude did little to help him. With Jason Perillo in the corner, Bisping was able to capitalize on the champion's relaxed guard with a punch that stunned the AKA standout, leading to a definitive knockout, as he was relentless and didn't let Rockhold forget anything he said in the lead-up.
Some say revenge is sweet. I disagree. I think it's better than sweet.
Number 6, Chael Sonnen versus the world. Before showing the world his skills on the mic, Sonnen was a fringe contender and nomad in the fight game, most known for verbally submitting to Babalu Sobral and unofficially winning the WEC middleweight crown after a Paulo Filo meltdown. But once he found his voice, he found himself in big fight after big fight with huge spotlights, fame, and paydays attached. Anderson Silva twice, John Jones, Fedor Emelianenko, Tito Ortiz, Sonnen has fought a who's who of the all-time greats. One thing all of those opponents share with respect to Sonnen is that they were able to finish the self-proclaimed American gangster. Declaring that he'd make Silva's wife fix him a steak led to being triangle choked, doubling down on insults to Brazilians and declaring Silva sucked led to a fight-ending knee to the chest in the rematch, and these sweet rhymes mocking Jones resulted in a one-round thrashing. And with those taunts directed at Ortiz's past relationship with former porn star Jenna Jameson,
Tito always says I'm using my mouth to get my opportunities. The only person I know that made money using their mouth is his ex-wife.
Turned into this. And his claims of Fedor being overrated, well, you get the idea. And while his opponents have repeatedly gotten the last laugh, Sonnen has probably wiped away these tears with the bundles of money he's made as a top draw and talking head for ESPN. Number 5, Antonio Silva versus ALISTAIR Overeem. ALISTAIR Overeem was one of the more dominating heavyweights outside of the UFC. He plowed through most of the heavyweights that were put in front of him, obtaining belts in Strikeforce and Dream whilst also managing success as a kickboxer, winning the K1 Grand Prix in 2010. His UFC debut was a highly anticipated destruction of former UFC champion Brock Lesnar. He dismissed Bigfoot as a stepping stone and a tune-up fight before his inevitable chance to add to his belt collection. And when the fight started, the predictions looked accurate. It looked like Overeem's victory was a pre-gone conclusion. However, it all caught up to the Reem as Bigfoot took the opportunity to unleash a fight-ending flurry. The overconfident Overeem was slumped against the fence, being held up only by Bigfoot's strikes until referee Herb Dean mercifully stopped the bout. Bigfoot stood over his fallen foe and loudly taunted him as he claimed the win and title shot. Number 4, Rose Namajunas versus Joanna Jędrzejczyk 1. By the time Joanna Jędrzejczyk met Rose Namajunas at UFC 217, the Polish kickboxer set the MMA world ablaze with 14 consecutive wins that included snatching the UFC's strawweight title and 5 successful defenses. As she closed in on Rousey's record of 6 title defenses for a female UFC champion, much of the pre-fight talk centered around Joanna's legacy among the all-time greats. Jędrzejczyk seemed to lap it all up, and in addition she took shots at Namajunas and her well-documented struggles with mental health.
I think you cannot be the champion because you just can't do this. You can't deal with the media, you cannot deal with the pressure. It's too much for you.
And when they faced off at the ceremonial weigh-ins, Jędrzejczyk was in full antagonist mode. With Dana White holding her back, Jędrzejczyk finger-pointed and verbally lashed out at Namajunas. Meanwhile, Thug Rose maintained her composure and just whispered the Lord's Prayer during the champion's tirade.
You keep talking to her, what are you saying to her?
I'm just saying the Lord's Prayer.
At fight time, the attempted psychological games had little effect on the challenger though, as Joanna found herself floored by a right hand. After getting back up to her feet and briefly regrouping, Rose landed a picture-perfect shot that once again sent the champion to the canvas. The subsequent follow-up strikes prompted Joanna to tap to strikes, and after the fight, Jędrzejczyk finally declared the result was a fluke and she was still the queen of the strawweight division. And in an immediate rematch, Namajunas won a clear-cut decision to seal her title reign. Number 3, Ricky Bandejas versus James Gallagher. It was no secret that Bellator had high hopes for Gallagher. A talented Irish fighter with good finishing abilities could help the promotion boost its European presence. Being a training partner of Conor McGregor certainly didn't hurt either. And much like his SBG teammate, he also has a brash personality and loves the attention it brings. Before Scott Coker and company could open the door for Gallagher to enter title contention, he had to get through fellow rising prospect Ricky Bandejas. Bandejas was making his Bellator debut, and it was clear Gallagher didn't think too much of the debutant. Leading up to the fight, the Straminal downplayed Bandejas repeatedly.
But I'm just too good. I'm just too good. He's not my level. I'm that step above. I'm that next killer up.
At weigh-ins, he continued berating his opponents while Banderas seemed to take it all in stride. When Gallagher entered the cage, he walked straight towards the New Jersey native, talking even more before commission officials had to pull him away twice. And whilst being announced, he kept telling Banderas, "You're fucked." However, by the halfway point of the first round, a different story was being told. Banderas dropped him with a solid right hand, and the Irishman returned to his feet, still rocked, until Banderas proved that sidekicks do actually work. The follow-up punches left the once boastful fighter unconscious and with his first professional defeat. Number 2, TJ Dillashaw vs Cody Garbrandt 1. Returning to UFC 217, the departure of TJ Dillashaw from his longtime training home of Team Alpha Male sent shockwaves throughout the camp. Joining in on the chaos was another standout Team Alpha Male bantamweight Cody Garbrandt. While Dillashaw was reigning as the bantamweight champion, Garbrandt entered the UFC and was tearing through the same division, quickly rising through the rankings. After officially leaving the team to train with Ludwig full-time, Dillashaw lost the belt to Dominic Cruz, who would then go on to lose it to Garbrandt. And when the UFC set Garbrandt and Dillashaw as coaches opposite each other on The Ultimate Fighter, it was clear that this rivalry wasn't going away. Garbrandt even went so far as to wrapping a hand around Dillashaw's throat and trying to shove him by his neck. Part of his war of words included allusions to training sessions where he got the better of Dillashaw. Sure enough, just days away from the fight, the footage is leaked and shows Garbrandt slipping a punch and flooring Dillashaw with an overhand right. And when the fight began, Garbrandt looked poised to back up his words and defend the honor of his camp. However, after surviving a scary first round and a middle finger, Dillashaw regained his wits, dropped Garbrandt twice, and finished him with follow-up ground and pound. Like Namajunas and JOANNA JEDRZEJCZYK, there would be an immediate rematch, and that would again lead to Dillashaw getting his hand raised. And number 1, Khabib Nurmagomedov vs Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor certainly earned the nickname Mystic Mac. Save for the first Nate Diaz fight, which was so close to making this list, McGregor has backed up his skills on the mic with skills in the cage. However grandiose his predictions of knocking out Jose Aldo and Dustin Poirier in the first round were, they actually happened. And when he said he would dominate Eddie Alvarez to be the first to hold titles in 2 different weight classes simultaneously, he did it. So when McGregor finally returned to the octagon against the newly crowned lightweight champion Khabib Nurmagomedov, you could be forgiven for thinking Mystic Mac could shock the world again, even if you were aware of the undefeated Dagestani and talent for smothering and brutal wrestling-based offense. With an ugly trail of regrettable instances between the two and their respective camps, the stage was set for another verbal beatdown from McGregor. At the first press conference to promote their UFC 229 bout, a proper 12-influenced McGregor predicted another early KO win and trashed Nurmagomedov's country while taunting him about not drinking whiskey due to his Islamic beliefs.
I don't drink.
Why don't you drink?
I don't drink.
Why don't you drink?
I never drink.
I'll tell you some buzz at parties.
I never drink.
You mad backwards cunt. You're dead when I get my hands on you, do you hear me?
I never
He even saved some fury for Khabib's manager Ali Abdelaziz, echoing some unflattering personal details about him.
Shut your mouth, Ali Abdelaziz, mad terrorist.
Ali.
Terrorist snitch.
Ali.
I know a lot about you as well, you mad rat.
Stunning the media in attendance and the millions of fans who could watch via live streams. During fight week, Conor came late to the press conference, which led the Eagle walking out before his arrival, and the boasts continued, this time to the chorus of cheering Irish fans.
What's up, Ireland? The Irish are back in town, I fucking love it.
But the fight was not nearly what McGregor said it would be. Shortly after the opening bell, Nurmagomedov got a takedown and established his top position control. This noble turned into an avalanche as Khabib just dominated the former champion. When the rear naked choke was sunk in 3 minutes into the 4th round, the tap was inevitable, and well, nothing else happened after that.
He jumps the fence. No.
Thanks for watching that video. Please do like and subscribe. We upload 3 jaw-droppingly juicy MMA videos a week to get your teeth into, and let us know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks so much to Anthony Walker who wrote this list. You can follow him on Twitter at AntWalkerMMA. And thanks so much to MJ Moore for editing this list. You can follow him at TomMJMoore on Twitter. Make sure to follow us at OnPointMMA and Tom A. Ransom on Twitter, and you make sure you have a great day. many qualities we admire in fighters. No matter what level a mixed martial artist competes at, it takes a certain level of resilience to enter a cage or ring and do battle with another trained combatant. Just the act of fighting itself demands a certain level of grit and fortitude that the average person simply doesn't possess. As much praise as we throw upon a fighter who displays